All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfrey, of course, and I am your host, per usual. Let's see, on the agenda for this particular episode, we have an upcoming UFC event to preview UFC Fight Night 267. They're in Houston. We're going to preview that whole card. I did a little bit of that last week, again, like my brief early thoughts, so it's okay. We'll get into the sort of meat and potatoes of that. Sorry if I'm a little under the weather. Not super, little under the weather. Been one of those weeks when, insomnia kicks up and then obligations kick in. So none of that ever quite goes the way you'd like it to. We also have some news. There's an update on Tom Aspinall, UFC heavyweight champion. Some new stuff with the UFC lawsuit, all that fun stuff. So we'll go through all that. And yeah, that's what we got on the agenda. So, of course, anything you can do to interact with the product is always appreciated. Like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review. You all know the drill as far as that goes. So anything you can do there is, of course, always appreciated. Okay, fine. All right. Yeah, I think that's it. Let's jump into this then, shall we? My notes over here so I can put the timestamps in when I do this. When I change this up a little bit later. All right. UFC on it. I'm still used to that, man. UFC Fight Night 267 will be coming our way Saturday. Should be a good time. From Houston, Texas, in the main event, middleweight contenders Sean Strickland and Anthony Hernandez. That's a very, very relevant fight. Strickland, of course, former champion. Fluffy's on the ascent. It's a pretty good time should be had here. So Strickland, up and down. These two had. If this were a 3-round fight, I might actually pick Strickland. Believe it or not, he's just really hard to look good against. He's not impossible to beat, but I mean, last time he was like cleanly, soundly beaten. Probably the last Drickus fight. So he's been out of action for a bit, hasn't he? A little over a year. Not a lot over a year, but a little over a year. February of 25 when he lost the rematch with Drickus. He lost the first fight, of course, in 24. That second loss to Drickus is maybe the cleanest loss he's suffered since Pereira knocked him out. So he's hard to look good against. He's got a good gas tank. He's got a fairly well-rounded skill set. He just chooses to employ it in a fairly linear fashion. Good about obstructing straight punches. Got a good teep game. One of the few MMA guys with a good teep game. He'll definitely annoy you with that front kick. He's got a pretty good jab, and again, he's got good counter wrestling. There's a few weaknesses. Weaknesses may be the wrong way to phrase it. As with every choice you make in combat sports, there's trade-offs. His style is great about obstructing straight line punches. He does a lot of stuff here, kind of close to his chest. But anytime something comes at him, he deflects, reaches. The reaching, especially with the lead arm, just opens up, that side there. Instead of it being here, it's out there, and you can come around there pretty easily. That's what Poetan did to him, but for such a very for such a glaring hole that particular strategy leaves, not a lot of people have been able to capitalize on it. Again, Poetan did, but that's just you can't give Poetan a free left hook on you. That's asking for like death. Not quite as much. No, very few other people have been able to really kind of crack the code on Strickland. One of the ways Fluffy will be able to, I think, kind of attack that is. We do have something here from Tyler_bets. Garcia or Barrios? Ooh. I'm not sure about that one. I like Barrios. He's looked a little. Then like I don't know, man. Garcia is just kind of out to lunch these days, isn't he? I kind of got a hard time. I just kind of have a hard time picking Garcia overall as a general rule. So if you want to take that for what it's worth. Yeah, I haven't seen the odds on that, but if Barrios is a big dog, there's definitely, I think, probably some gambling value to be had there for whatever value my opinion on that has. So thank you for stopping by. Hope you stick around. So anyway, the ways Fluffy will attack Strickland, big pace, a lot of wrestling. Now Strickland's counter wrestling is good, but once Fluffy gets a hold of you, he's really good about forcing you to kind of stay in the mud with him, so to speak. Like he just drowns you a little bit there. And Strickland hasn't actually fought a real serious wrestler. Jeez, in how long? Dang, when was the last time he fought a serious wrestler? Jack Hermanson, maybe? Hermanson's a lot more moving, though. Maybe arguably Abus, but that's iffy. And he also stopped Abus because Abus Magomedov has no appreciable gas tank. So this is going to be something that Strickland hasn't actually had to face down in a little bit, whereas good old Fluffy Hernandez there, he's on a good winning streak. He hasn't lost since the Kevin Holland fight in 2020. Vieira, Fremd, Marc-Andre Barrio. Yeah, Ankalaev. I tend to take gym stuff with a grain of salt, Tyler, but yeah, it's not nothing. And Ankalaev's also got a really weird wrestling game. Like his actual top control is pretty good, but his takedowns are a little iffy. Let's see. Yeah, Shabazian, Kopilov, Pereira, Allen, Delidze. Yeah, Hernandez is on a really good streak. And the layoff for Sean might have done him a decent bit of good, but I'm not worried about, how would this fight go if it were a strict wrestling match? I don't know. But Fluffy's real good about just spending a lot of time right there in immediate proximity to you. And Strickland's game doesn't do as well in that kind of a distance. Like he's not bad at it. And against other guys, he could probably wear them out. It's not at all impossible for him to. I mean, he kind of did it to Abus, who really outgrappled him for the first round of that fight, but you can't rely on Fluffy getting tired. That's just asking for trouble. Out of curiosity, what are the odds on this fight? Yeah, that's the wrong tab. And which of you? Yeah, the odds have Hernandez about minus 300, give or take. That's probably about right. I think discounting Strickland is a bad idea, but between the layoff and some of the stylistic requirements, the other thing about this one, small note, if this were in the smaller cage, actually, I think that would favor, that would help Hernandez a little bit more. But in the big cage, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. So still going with Hernandez there, but it's a relevant fight. Happy to have that as a pretty solid main event. Not very much looking forward to the pre-fight build because on any of these really, like who do we have here that's actually like interesting to hear talk? So there's that. Co-main event. Yeah, decision distance seems about right, Tyler. I mean, Hernandez hasn't been stopped since, again, Kevin Holland got him, and Sean Strickland, I don't think hits as hard as Kevin Holland does. And Strickland hasn't been stopped since, again, Pereira knocked him out, and he's tough and durable. And Hernandez, I don't think has near the same pop that, Poatan does, but few people do. All right, so co-main event, Jeff Neal and Uroš Medic. This was supposed to be Jeff Neal and Kevin Holland. Holland pulled out. Medic steps in. This is going to, whatever way this goes, it's going to be funny because Medic he always gets hit real early and gets hurt. And then if you can finish him, you win. If you can't, he recovers and seems to knock you out. That's kind of the pattern with him at the moment. More specifically, what's Medic done recently? 2-fight winning streak, stoppages over Gilbert Urbina and Muslim Salikov. That's not nothing. How many times has this guy been out of the first? He's only been See, he's never been the distance. He's been into the third round once when he beat Matthew Semmelsberger. Yeah, those two were huffing and puffing. By the end of that one, that was here in Salt Lake. Punahele Soriano stopped him in 30 seconds. Yeah, I mean, he either like gets knocked out funny or he stops you kind of funny. Like, and the real question here is Jeff Neal. I mean, Neal's 35, so maybe starting the downhill slide. He had a good run at one point. He's been with the UFC for a bit at this point, right? Came in 18. Went in 18 February, so he's coming up on 8 years. In fact, this will be a little over 8 years when that fight happens. That's a respectable time to be in the promotion. He had some really good finishes. Again, had a good run. Those back-to-back losses to Stephen Thompson and Neil Magny definitely monkeyed with his momentum. Most recently, he's only 1-3 in his last 4. Now, there's a pretty serious caveat there. I shouldn't say minor. It's pretty serious. Those 3 losses are to Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Gary, and Carlos Prates. Like, oh no, you lost to maybe the best guy in the division, maybe the other best guy in the division, and one of the most devastating finishers in the division. The problem is that the only win he's got during that time frame was the weird freak knee injury that Rafael dos Anjos suffered when they fought. So I don't know where Jeff Neal is. He's opened up a little bit this last week or so about some of his career ups and downs came because he was dealing with some addiction problems in his personal life. And, hey, God bless you getting clean, man. That's so much more important than, fighting. But that is the kind of thing that will mess with you. So if he is, kind of putting that behind him, this is a winnable fight for Jeff Neal. And the problem I think he's really going to wind up facing is if he loses it, that's probably about the end of his, like, we're going up in the world kind of thing. So odds, I think I'm going to go with Neal personally. I think Medic's defense is a bit too porous, and if Jeff Neal still got a little bit of the power and delivery system, he's going to get there. And I don't know that Medic can survive that. The short notice thing affects this a little bit too. I mean, I would absolutely, on a full camp, I might be more inclined to lean towards Medic, but with Jeff Neal, it's just rough to try and expect you to come out and get hit as often as Medic does and then hang with what Neal brings to you. Next up, good fight here, actually. Featherweights Dan Ige and Melquiel Costa. Costa was one of the big stories of the last 18 months, give or take. Had a few ups and downs early in his career, but recently he's been on a bit of a tear. He's been handling business. And Ige has been rough his last few fights, man. He's 2-4? Yeah, 2-4 in his last 6. Losses to Bryce Mitchell, Diego Lopez, Lerone Murphy, and Patricio Pitbull. Now, the Mitchell losses, that's a little damning. Lopez still near the top of the division. Not going to get too mad at him for that one. Murphy, of course, also still right near the top of the division. Should be higher than Lopez, but hey, what do I know? He got a good finish over Woodson late, but that Pitbull fight was, I don't know, given how sort of unimpressive and uninspired Pitbull looked in his UFC debut, you would have thought, okay, Ige's the kind of fighter who's going to be able to do something against him. And then it's not that Ige had zero success there, but he kept finding himself in trouble. And you consistently finding yourself in trouble against Pitbull at this stage of his career. I have a lot of respect for Dan Ige, but if we're going to be, being serious here, he's another guy came in off the Contender Series in 2018 when the Contender Series still was pretending to have standards. He's also 34, so he's another one of these guys who, got fairly high, but has never quite broken through the very top level. And Costa on the ascent. Costa 25-7, 5-fight winning streak. Yeah, that head kick over Morgan Chartier was real nice. Choked out Feely, beat Christian Rodriguez and Julian Erosa. The question here is just like the best version of Dan Ige, I think probably can beat Costa. I just don't know that we're getting the best Dan Ige anymore at this point. I mean, again, I respect the heck out of him, but that's a big thing. What are the odds on this one? I'm inclined to pick Costa. Yeah, there they are. Costa minus 230, give or take, plus 180 or so, 175 on Ige. Yeah, again, I think that's about right. I'm going to go Costa. This could very well be one of those scenarios where you have the younger talented guy on the come up and he hits the wrong vet. Ige, problem I think with that line of thought against Dan Ige is Dan Ige has done that a couple of times already to other guys, and that wears off at some point. So I'm going with Costa, but that's a good fight. A less good fight: Sergey Spivak versus Ante Delia at heavyweight. Delia coming off of that loss to Waldo Cortez Acosta. That was kind of weird. Spivak, the polar bear. 2-fight losing streak to Jailton Almeida and Waldo Cortez Acosta. One 1-3 in his last 4. The other loss was to Cyril Gahn. I can hold that one too much. Again, I mean, yeah, Waldo Cortez Acosta is definitely moving up in the world, if for no other reason than because a lot of other heavyweights are going away. You get stopped by Jailton Almeida in 2025, though. I do think that's a little bit of a problem. He armbarred Marcin Tybura in 24. He arm triangled Derek Lewis in 23. He's just a grappling heavy guy. And he's a little chinny. Not in the like completely falls apart, like gets knocked out chinny, but more in the, oh boy, heavy damage coming at him makes him show up. Like the old adage, it's not an adage, but like when you talk about people who like to get hit, no one likes to get hit, but people maintain composure under fire and adversity better. Spivak is not one of the guys who necessarily maintains composure all that well under fire. So I think Delia probably gets this one done. That said, if Delia overlooks Spivak, Spivak could get him to the mat and try to drown him there. So that was right. Okay. But yeah, I'll just slightly with Delia. I'm going to go with that as well. I got to pick an underdog here at some point. Welterweight next, Jacoby Smith will face Josiah Harrell. So this was supposed to be Jacoby Smith and Seok-Hyun Ko. Ko pulled out with an injury. Unfortunate. I think that would have been a really good fight. Interesting story about Josiah Harrell. Harrell was supposed to fight for, I think, the Contender Series, but in one of his pre-fight medicals, they found some anomaly in his brain, like an unruptured aneurysm, something like that. He had that removed surgically, so he's good now. Has won like 4 fights since then. And he's taken this fight on short notice. Unfortunately, fighting Jacoby Smith on short notice is a big deal. Jacoby Smith is one of those definite prospects that when I think the time comes to pick against him, it's going to, I'm happy to do so. Frankly, I might have gone with Ko. I think stylistically, Ko matched up with him in some interesting ways. Again, respect to Harrell. Great story. Glad he's made it back here to the, extent that he wishes to pursue this. But I'm going with Smith. I think he's a safer pick, if nothing else. And again, I got to get to a dog here at some point. Middleweight next, Zachary Reese and Michelle Pereira. Oof. These two. So Reese has been a bit up and down. Had that no contest with Dumas last year due to a groin strike. I felt so it takes a lot to make me feel bad for someone with Cedricus Dumas's like patterns of behavior. But when that dude like legitimately couldn't extend his body after being kicked in the groin, like literally couldn't walk, could not get vertical, had to be like carted out of there. Like whatever crimes he may or may not have committed, as a man, you have to feel a little bit for that. That sucks. But Reese beat Jackson McVeigh most recently. Yeah. I mean, his UFC wins are over what? Julian Marquez, Jose Medina, Dushko Todorovic and Jackson McVeigh. All right. So do I think Pereira still has enough in him to be better than those guys? Boy, is that a question. I was pretty high on Pereira at middleweight for a while. I thought he was like really going to be something there, and then Anthony Hernandez just broke him. He lost to Abus Magomedov. He lost to Kyle Dawkins. That was a quick loss too. Pereira might be washed. I mean, he's only 32. Good grief. But he's had 47 fights. And he's been in the UFC since what? 19. So 7 years, almost 50 pro fights overall. The mileage will get to you, man. The mileage really will get to you. This is probably Reese. Odds are with Pereira. All right, I'll go with Reese. For no other reason than to get an underdog pick here. Because I hate picking nothing but favorites. Even if there's, kind of good reason to do so. That's your main card. So, again, good main event. Neal and Medic will be fun for as long as it lasts, probably. Iga and Costa is the one to circle. Like, if there's another one you really want to make sure and watch, Iga and Costa is probably going to deliver. Those two are fairly bits of, can't miss action. As for the prelims, you have Chidi and Njokuani against Carlos Leal. Oh, man, Carlos Leal. I had some moderate hopes for him at one point. But let's have a quick look here. Where are you? Something happened to that one? Or is this just listed weirdly? Yeah, it's listed weirdly. Okay, there we go. Carlos Leal still got a good record. He's 22-7. Man, he had the worst case of back knee I'd ever seen his last fight. It was gnarly, and I've seen some bad ones, but his was woof. He's what, 2-1 in the UFC, 1-2. Yeah, Muslim Salikov knocked him out. That was the one that didn't. Rinat beating him, I wasn't surprised by, but he beat the crap out of Alex Morono, and kind of thought he'd beat old man Salikov, but Salikov pulled that one out one last time. This is a tough one. This is a well-matched fight. Whether you care all that much about it or not is somewhat immaterial. It's well-matched. Let's see. I think you guys were all up here. Fairly close. The odds are slightly with Leal. What are they seeing that I might not be? What's Chidi done lately? Lost to Jake Matthews. That was a tough loss. 3 in a row before that. Split decision over Reese McKees. That was a fine decision for him. Jared Gooden and Elijah Zaleski dos Santos. He missed weight for that one, though. Man, both these guys are kind of front runners, I think, is sort of the issue. So whoever's better about getting on the front foot is going to have the more reliable success. Chidi might be a little bit better at that. Leal is a bit more just a puncher. Range navigation might be a problem. What are the dimensions here? Because Chidi's a big welterweight. He's 6'3", 80 inches of reach. He's a huge welterweight. Leal is 5'11", 74 inches of reach. Oof, yeah. So 6 inches of reach disadvantage and 4 of height. All right, that's enough. That big of a size disparity is a real thing to try and overcome. So no problem going with I'll go with Njokuani there. All right, flyweight next. Ode Osborne and Alabi Idris. I remember being vaguely impressed with Idris. 10-1. He lost his UFC debut, right? Yeah, to Joseph Morales. Oh, he was. Oh, I remember that. Okay, I was confusing with somebody else. I remember this guy now. He was the one I picked against in that tough finale, just because of Morales, like actually had been in the UFC level before and had done some good work. Yeah, that didn't go his way. I think he'll do a little bit better this time. I mean, Ode Osborne is way up and down. Like 13-9, won no contest. 5-7 in the UFC, coming off a loss to Steve Erceg. He beat Louis Garule to end a 3-fight losing streak. Good grief. I mean, okay, you lose to Oscar Almabayev. Almabayev's pretty good. Filio's decent. Ronaldo Rodriguez, though. Yeah, I think they're trying to give Idris a very, very winnable fight here. Osborne might shock that whole thing. He really might. Like, he's capable of that, but he's been so inconsistent. Yeah, spell this right. There we go. So yeah, I'll go with Idris there. Not a favorite. I got at least one underdog pick that I'm okay with. Flyweights, Alden Correa and Louis Garule. Let's have a quick look at these two gentlemen. So Correa, 11-3, won no contest, 4-fight winning streak. That's solid. 5-fight unbeaten streak. His UFC debut was a win over Alessandro Costa, September of last year. That was a decent fight, if memory serves. Alrighty. And he's struggled a little bit. 10-2, 1-2 in the UFC? 0-2 in the UFC, geez. Lost to Ode Osborne and Jesus Aguilar. All right, I'm going to read the tea leaves a little bit on this one and go with Correa. Yeah, that's a pretty heavy favorite, too. I don't mind picking dogs if I got a reason to do so, and I'm just struggling to find one in some of these cases. Women's bantamweights, Nora Cornole and Jocelyn Edwards. Oh, jeez. Good grief, who could possibly care? Cornole, 36, 9-3, 3-2 in the UFC. Losses are to Jacqueline Cavalcante and Carol Hossa. Cornole's that, can't see a picture of her. I'm pretty sure I remember who she is, but I don't wish to. Yeah. You're the French Muay Thai fighter. Struggled with Carol Hossa. I mean, I'm not. She missed weight in that Haley Cowan fight too. That wasn't great. But I don't care much for Jocelyn Edwards either. 16-6, 7-4 in the UFC. 3-fight winning streak. 1 weight miss during that stretch. Coming off a win over Priscilla Cachoeira, but Cachoeira shouldn't be in the UFC. These two are gonna kind of just strike it out. Odds are probably a little bit with Edwards. Odds are heavily with Edwards. Jeez. She's like -300. That's a weird one. I don't know how to. Okay, I'm going to asterisk this one. Of all the fights to asterisk, I'm going to throw an asterisk on this one. I got to double check something about this, but I'll go with Edwards at the moment because she's the favorite by a big margin. And makes me think there's something I'm missing that I got to double check. Next up, we have Ramiz Brahimaj and Punahele Soriano. That's not a bad fight, actually. So Brahimaj, 3-fight winning streak. Mickey Gall, Billy Ray Goff, Austin Vanderford. Lost to Temba Gorimbo. Lost to Court McGee in 22. Brahimaj's not a bad fighter, but I've never quite really been high on him. Whereas Soriano at welterweight, I mean, he's a little one note in some respects, but he's been doing work. I mean, his welterweight debut win over Miguel Baeza was good. He knocked the stuffing out of Uros Medic in 30 seconds. And he did a number on Nikolai Veretennikov. So welterweight seems to be suiting Soriano pretty good. And I've underestimated Brahima in the past, though. That's definitely bitten me. This one's super close. The odds are slightly with Brahima. All right, this will be another dog pick for me. Just I do believe that Soriano can win this fight, and I don't mind picking an underdog just to get again another one on there, so I'm not just straight favorite picking because that's cheap. Brahima's grappling could be a serious problem for Soriano, though. I get why he's the favorite. Just put it that way. Welterweight Phil Rowe and Jean-Paul Lebussonoye. Where are you from, sir? I mean, you'd think France, but where are you? Does Fight fall out or is this new? Okay. Oh, there it is. So this was supposed to be Lebosnoyani. I'm gonna just screw this up until I hear it done properly. So Lebosnoyani was supposed to fight Austin Vanderford. Vanderford fell out for whatever reason. It's not listed here, and in steps Phil Rowe, the Fresh Prince. So let's have a quick look at Lebosnoyani. He's American, which doesn't help me guess how to pronounce his last name properly. That could be a lot of different things from here. 9-2. This is his UFC debut. Yes, yeah, coming off the Contender Series. I'm trying to give him a winnable fight. Phil Rowe, what's he been up to recently? 35. I didn't realize he was that old. Time keeps on ticking, doesn't it? 1-3 in his last 4 losses to Neil Magny, Jake Matthews, and Seokyun Ko. He beat Angelosa before the loss to Ko. I think this is Lebosnoyani. I'm going to just misspell that guy's name too. But that's going to be the pick. So Osnoyani. Okay. All right. Then what do we got? What's next? Jordan Levitt and Yadier Del Valle. I want to like Jordan Levitt. He's young. He looks older than he is. He's young. He's only 30. Pretty good grappler. Not great. He may have got to the UFC a little bit too early because he's been up and down. I mean, coming off a good Anaconda choke over Kurt Holloway. That was nice. He got submitted by Chase Hooper before that. I mean, his UFC losses are what? Claudio Pugliese, that was a weird fight. Paddy Pimblett, I'm not going to hold that against you. And Chase Hooper, who kind of just did what he did better. Del Valle, the other half of that weird fight with Isaac Dulgarian. that was a thing. The UFC seems to like Del Valle. He's undefeated. I don't know how to. Part of the problem with the way that Dulgarian fight went down is I don't know what I can actually take from it as far as where his skill set is and what's going on there. Like the fight before that, he did solid when he beat Connor Matthews. But Dulgarian, like, we all know what's up with that fight. So this is what? Is Levitt dropping to featherweight? That changes things a little bit, doesn't it? If this were Del Valle moving up, I would go with Levitt. With Levitt going down, I'm gonna lean towards Oh, jeez. Okay, the odds are like minus 400 for Del Valle. I wouldn't be that confident. Just put it like that. And kicking everything off, we have Juliana Killer Miller and Carly Judice. So Miller, 4-3. She had that big old layoff. 2-2 in the UFC. Yeah, she won a season of The Ultimate Fighter and didn't miss a full year, but lost to Veronica Hardy, lost to Luana Santos, then missed a while. Like that Luana Santos loss was in August of 23. She doesn't come back until May of 25. She beats Ivana Petrovic, and now so almost a year later again, we've got her and Judice, and those layoffs are just, I don't know how much they're helping her. Judice is 5-2, 2-0 in the UFC, 2-1 in the UFC. Lost to Gabriela Hernandez, then beat Yusneni Yusneni Dubin and Nicole Cagliari. She's finishing some people. Look, Miller's grappling is real good, but if she can't force it, then she's gonna struggle. The layoff again is another big component of this. Geez, Judice is a huge favorite. I'm gonna go with her too, but yeah, she's like minus 800 some places. Good grief, that's kind of nutty. And that is the card. So that is UFC Fight Night 267. Save that and go away. Be coming our way Saturday from, again, Houston, Texas. I will have coverage in the MMA zone of 411mania.com per usual. So stop on by, say hello. I always appreciate it. Y'all know how that works. So now you got my picks, and yeah, that moves down there. All right, so let's move on to the news. Jeez, I got through that there's not a lot to talk about prediction-wise there, so. All right, let's move on to the news then, because there's a few things we want to talk about here. So, probably the biggest news of the week, Pete Carroll accompanied Tom Aspinall for eye surgery, double eye surgery as it happens. And he's got a nice article up on Yahoo Sports under the Uncrowned section, if memory serves. It's a really good piece. You should go read it. But it kind of details what's going on with Aspinall. He really lacks peripheral vision. On one part, I forget which one. Sorry. He's also got a sort of like semi-permanent black spot that's sort of in the middle of his vision. None of that's good. So he had double eye surgery to try and correct it. But like, I think he might technically at the moment be legally blind. Like he gets vertigo. Moving around is very difficult. Detecting, again, peripheral vision motion is hard. Driving is not really a thing. And you would be amazed how many fighters have really messed up eyes or just messed up vision. It's not always the eye. Sometimes it's the head trauma that rattles your visual cortex. The number of them that are like legally blind. Now, legally blind is distinct from like medically blind, because the legal threshold for blindness is a certain criteria of, visual acuity, how far away you can see things, stuff like that. Whereas like full on like medical blindness is like when you can't see anything. But he might be legally blind, where legally you don't want him doing stuff that is very sight dependent, like, driving. But that's not uncommon, believe it or not. There's a martial arts YouTuber, Ramsey Dewey. Really good stuff. Go check out his channel. I mean, if you're here, you've probably heard of him. But he's opened up in the past that, like, yeah, he's legally blind. His last fight did that to him. His last MMA fight, which was the last fight he ever had professionally, suffered a pretty serious skull fracture. And he's got a big old black spot kind of in the middle of his vision. So he sees via peripheral. And there's not a lot of guys who just deal with that. But you can't fight that way. So we'll see if this surgery is able to help. I mean, the other problem is you get eye surgery, like you get certain surgeries and there's stuff you can do, training wise or health wise. You get eye surgery, like you ain't doing nothing. Like you do nothing. You don't even take like one of those, because it could really screw you up, and that could result in permanent blindness, like total vision loss. So we're gonna have to wait and see a little bit on that, but we've got the update on him. It sucks that it's bad. It really does. Um, we should all have a little bit more blowback coming at Cyril Gahn for some of how this played out. Because good grief, man, you may have robbed us of one of the only good heavyweights that this miserable era has managed to produce. So we're all wishing Tom Aspinall a speedy recovery and a full one. Whether he look, I wish him a full recovery, whether he fights again or not. If he never fights again, I don't care. I would really like the man to be able to live a full life, drive to pick up your kids, that kind of thing. So we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, we did get that update, and yeesh, it's not looking good for any kind of like immediate return for him. So if you're a praying person, keep Tom Aspinall in your prayers. But other than that, we're just stuck in wait and see territory. So, bit of a downer update there. All right. Next up, we have a really interesting little bit of an update on the UFC lawsuit. This is the Johnson case. So, 2 weeks ago, several members of the UFC brass, including UFC President Dana White, UFC, he used to be chief legal counsel or chief legal officer. I forget which, because counsel is like hired out. If you're like hired by the place, you're legal. It's a little bit different. And Guy basically was allegedly now just doing what Dana used to do. Hunter Campbell, they were called to testify. And one of the big gripes is there's a lot of like correspondence data missing that the UFC and Zuffa, whatever, have not turned over. A lot of this would include like discussions with managers, discussions with fighters, and the UFC did their kind of dog and pony show. Well, we don't know what happened to the phones. I talked about it. Other people have had more in-depth coverage than I have. Go check all that out. Well, here's the thing. There's a few other avenues that you can go to try and obtain that same set of data. And the plaintiffs, in this case of the Johnson group, is trying to find other ways. They're making a good faith effort to show for the court that they're doing this as well, not just picking on the UFC necessarily. So they tried to get some of the same information from what would be the managers, because you could get it there. If correspondence is between, say, a management company and the UFC, if the UFC lost their record of the data, the other side should have it. So you text someone, if you lose your phone, their phone still has the text logs, right? And Dominance, this is Ali Abdelaziz's group, threw a fit. Refused to comply unless a new court order was issued, weren't turning anything over. Like now they're being like named, and the plaintiffs would like them to have to pay the legal fees associated with some of this stuff and be held in contempt of court. And man, unless Ali Abdelaziz's like agreement with the government for his snitch work is really, really good, he's playing with some serious fire here. And I said the previous bit facetiously. He's playing with fire here. Like, this is not something you screw around with to be like dismissing this. It does make you wonder what's in there that everyone over there is like, well, again, especially like the top level. So this would be Ali and a few other guys like that who are just like, nope, we're not doing it. Not going to do it. Not going to comply. Well, that can go real bad for you, my man. I don't think they've got, I haven't heard anything negative about Iridium yet. It's one of the other major houses of MMA talent as far as representation goes. So check, we'll be on the lookout for that. But yeah, Dominance is going to be compelled again. They are, I don't know what's going on over there, but that's real dicey and real shady looking. I don't know if anything's improper is going on, but it looks that way. Like that is not, if you don't have anything to hide, complying with some of this stuff should not be a major issue. But well, we'll see. So that's getting a little bit interesting. But as the plaintiffs are looking more and more to try and find other records of this correspondence that they're looking for, they're going to go to more and more managerial groups. So the Kawas might come into play. Again, Iridium, I already mentioned. That's Jason House, I think, is the guy who runs that. Few other places like that. So again, we'll see, but I expect some stuff to come out. Now, there's been a little bit of misunderstanding about what they're actually looking for here. I know Brendan Schaub in particular was like, so what are we looking for? Dana White being mean so you can run him out of the UFC? Like, no. Look, are there people who kind of do this, who are going to try and make hay out of Dana White's behavior and vocabulary? Probably. But that's not a legal argument. Like, the plaintiffs are not going to put forward, look, Dana White said this thing, that say he's using slurs, which I don't know that he is, but hypothetically. You're not going to get in front of court, in front of a federal judge, and go, Your Honor, they're clearly guilty because this person there is using this language that we don't like. That's not a legal argument at all. What they're looking for is evidence of coercion, collusion, how power is sort of handed out. Like, what do the negotiations look like? What is the relationship between management and the UFC brass? We're looking at business practices here, not culture, not language policing. Again, are there going to be people who try to make hay out of that stuff? Probably. I'm sure there's always going to be people that do that, but that's mostly immaterial. Oh no, people who talk into a camera, kind of like this, are going to put up screenshots. I'm not going to do that, of Dana White's stuff. It'll be over there, maybe in that corner, depending on which one they want to go. And look at all these mean things Dana White said about so-and-so. That's not the argument. That's not a legal argument. That's not what they're looking for. It might come out, but that's not the substantive material they're looking for in this kind of a discovery process. They're looking for what the negotiations say about the state of the market. The UFC is being sued for uncompetitive business practices, not for being big meanies. Dana White's not being sued for defamation. The language police are not here. This is about the legal argument and the business practices. So, no, guys, like, no one wants Dana's text messages to see what he's saying about so-and-so. This isn't high school gossip. This is a federal court. We are arguing the legal standing and uncompetitive business practices. That's what's going on here. It's not super complicated. So, somebody liked the stream. I don't see who did it necessarily, but thank you for that. I appreciate it. Much obliged. So anyway, that's the lawsuit. We'll see what goes on there, and yeah, that's just getting ugly. Some slightly better news. Just move on to this one. So former UFC heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez was released on parole. He was paroled earlier, a couple of days ago, maybe earlier or yesterday. Good. Look, I said when the whole thing with Cain went down the first time, I'm fine with him serving time. Like, he behaved recklessly. He endangered people. I understand the impulse. I mean, everyone says, especially every guy, everyone says, like, if somebody does something to, my kid, my niece, my nephew, whatever, I'm going to find the guy and I'm going to, do bad things to them. The vast majority don't. And frankly, it's for the better that we don't. I don't need a society with that kind of, vigilante justice. It's not good. It's not good on the whole. But I understand the impulse. Cain followed through on that impulse. And he, again, behaved recklessly. He endangered innocent people. And even the guy he shot at, he didn't hit the guy he was supposed to be trying to get. It's one of the other reasons you don't really do this. Like, he broke a lot of laws. And to his credit, did not dispute that. He pled no contest, which is a interesting bit of legal standing you can do, because not guilty is an assertion. You're saying I did not do this. Guilty is an assertion. You're saying I did this. No contest is basically I'm not disputing the facts and evidence, some of which might be in my favor, some of which might not, but I'm not going to make a positive assertion, and we don't have to argue about the evidence. And that speeds things up quite a bit, legalistically speaking. So I was fine with the sentence that he was handed. And he is now he was eligible for parole. He's been paroled. Seems to have had no problems when he was incarcerated. Back out, ready to move on with his life. God bless. I hope he can. Again, I completely understand the impulse that he gave into. I think most of us do. But he also committed any number of, crimes, and he's paid for them. And hopefully he was a very law-abiding citizen before that. I don't expect recidivism in his case. So Cain's out, back with his family. Once again, God bless. Hope they can all put that ordeal behind them and move forward in health and all the good things in life. Because I don't think, I mean, even the judge when he sentenced Cain was like, I don't think you're a bad person or a serious danger, but you broke the law, and that does carry consequence. So, but he's on parole, so again, very glad for him to be out, and I wish him again nothing but the best. So, a little bit of good news there. All right, and last thing I have written down here after this, it'll just be me double checking the old social medias. But the UFC had some roster cuts over the last week, some of which were not surprising, some of which were. UFC veteran Alex Morono was released. Not too surprising. He'd kind of been on the decline for a while. Had a long UFC career, not nothing against him, but was probably about time for him to be done with the UFC. One of the surprising ones, Javid Basharat. Now, needs to be said about Basharat. His deal, his last fight was the last one on his contract, and he has not currently, as of this recording, signed a new deal. That's not quite the same as being cut. So he might still wind up back with the UFC, but right now he's not under contract with them. And he might not get re-signed. That is a very real thing, very real possibility for him. He had some ups and downs, in the UFC, and some of his losses were not great, and some of his wins were not all that great. And the UFC seems to be putting a premium on, the Tank Abbotts of the world, for want of a better expression. And I don't think Javid Basharat fits that mold. I don't think Farid Basharat fits that mold, but Farid hasn't lost yet, so they're kind of stuck with him for a little bit at least. Maybe the surprising one to get cut was Jailton Almeida. Now, Almeida, he announced after the loss in his last fight that he was going to go back to light heavyweight. Light heavyweight was not the weight class was not the problem. That was not what was holding his UFC career back at all. But the UFC just cut him. Now, I understand the UFC cutting him. I really do. A couple of reasons. One, he's been in some absolutely dreadful fights. I mean, just dreadful. The Derek Lewis fight was pretty awful for 25 minutes. The Volkov fight was pretty bad. The Kuniev fight was bad. It's just not, you can't look me in the eye and say that Jailton Almeida was consistently an entertaining fight. Now, that's not the only thing that's important, but we can't pretend it's not important either. As far as what is really important, when he came into the UFC, he actually kind of would run through people. His takedown game wasn't super dynamic, but for light heavyweight and heavyweight, it worked. He was able to get low, get guys down. His passing game was real good. His submission attacks were pretty solid. He actually looked like a threat, looked like a, pretty serious contender, a guy on the rise, if nothing else. And I said as much at the time. A lot of people did. But if you look at his last handful of fights, that's not it. He's kind of been figured out. And he's made no adjustments to that. His striking is still iffy. His takedowns are still not great. His passing game is really good still, but his submission threats seem a little bit limited. And his ground and pound is anemic at best. Most of the time, it's just absent. His fights didn't just get worse. His performances got worse. Sometimes that happens because you step up in class and you start fighting a lot better guys and you struggle, and that's understandable. But when you're able to do some of the stuff he was able to do, and then Just like nothing comes. Like, man, you were on top of Derek Lewis for like 23 of 25 minutes and you just got stalled out by corpse guard. I don't know what to tell you, my man. You had Alexander Volkov down repeatedly and landed like 9 significant strikes in a 15-minute fight where you had like 10 to 12 minutes of control time. I don't know what you want the UFC to do at that point. Like, I get them cutting him. His performances are degrading, not improving anymore. That said, it just kind of also needs to be acknowledged the UFC has almost stopped trying with heavyweight. I mean, again, I get Almeida going, but last year you cut Martin Bidet too. And okay, he's not the most exciting guy, but he was on the ascent. Almeida, you could argue, had started to decline, and that's understandable. But like, they're just not finding guys at heavyweight. And it's not just the UFC. This is an MMA problem worldwide. You can't look at any other MMA organization and go, boy, they've got that. The UFC heavyweight division is iffy, but KSW's got it on lockdown. You can't say that. Or, Octagon or PFL or whatever. You can't say that about any of those places. They don't have a good heavyweight division either. The sport is not attracting heavyweights at all. I mean, we're in a place where like Josh Hokett and Gable Steveson are and Hokett's already in the UFC, but Stevenson's gonna be there. And then it's just like they could maybe do something, but like, what are we even trying to do here if you're in the UFC? Hello to people in the chat room. Nice to see you guys. Always happy to try and interact with you to the extent that I can as soon as your messages pop up for me in my doohickey over here. But like, the UFC is just struggling to get heavyweights at all. I mean, they cut Hamdi Abdelwahab. I mean, they signed Hamdi Abdelwahab way too early for him. And then because he doesn't get to develop properly, he fights like crap. No one wants to see him anymore, and the UFC has to cut him. I mean, they don't have to, but they choose to. Like, there's no energy in the heavyweight division globally for the sport of MMA. I saw Luke Thomas with his play on Jonathan Swift in a modest proposal where he just said, like, cut heavyweight. It's of no real value anymore. And he went through a bunch of numbers about how many heavyweight fights are on the prelims, how many of them, result in bonuses. And it's just inarguable that the heavyweight division is not good. And it hasn't been good, and it's not getting better. Like, there has to be a pretty serious movement from the UFC to try and attract real talent to this division. But the reality is, an athletic heavyweight has options. The wrestling pipeline kind of dried up a while ago for a number of reasons. It still kind of works for smaller guys because, frankly, there's just not as much a smaller athletic guy can do if you want to still look for a professional competitive athletic avenue. There's just limited spots for guys who are like 5'4". You can only do so much there. But if you're a big guy, you got options, some of which involve a lot less brain damage and the grueling training and all that stuff. So heavyweight's just in a bad spot, and I don't know that the UFC actually has a plan in place to try and deal with this. I mean, I remember when they gutted the flyweight division, nearly got rid of it entirely, but ultimately wound up kind of being able to rebuild. They're going to have to do something like that with heavyweight. Like, they're just going to have to get rid of a bunch of these guys. The problem is, replacing them is not easy. You don't actually have a lot of talented heavyweights. So, whereas flyweight you did. Like, you could actually get to, okay, let's get rid of a bunch of these flyweights that have been around for a while and we know aren't really moving up. And we'll replace them with younger guys who are on the come up. And that kind of worked out for flyweight. They had some good luck along the way with a few other things, but it worked. Like, I just don't know what we're even going to do at heavyweight, like, to try and rebuild it. There's a few different guys that we've all thought maybe. Now you got Josh Hokett out there doing bad pro wrestling promos that nobody likes, but for a heavyweight, he's decently athletic, hits okay, and has a good, acceptable gas tank. Like, what are you going to do about that's a guy that's going to go someplace? Gable Steveson is probably going to just mow down a lot of these guys because he's a super athlete and he hits pretty hard. Like, the big thing about Gable Steveson is going to be what's he do under fire. Like, composure under fire is a big problem. That was like that, and the diverticulitis were the limiting factors for Brock Lesnar. Like, he just didn't react well when he got hit. He had a decent chin in terms of like, oh, you're going to get knocked out. No, like, took a lot to hurt that guy, but he didn't react well. And you get hit a lot in this sport, man. If you don't react well to it, and if you have a deep aversion to it and you can't train around it, you can't break some of those habits, it's a bad place for you to be, ultimately. So, yeah, that's where we are as far as all that goes. So, Jailton Almeida is not gone. Not here anymore. Sorry, he is gone. And we'll have to see what the UFC is able to try and do with heavyweight, but it's not looking good for them right now. So, all right, we've hit the hour mark. I kind of buzzed through a lot of that, so I'll be happy with that. All right, let's check the old social medias, see if anything crazy has broken. If you have, questions or comments you want me to address, throw them in the chat room. This is your last chance for the week. Otherwise, we'll be back here next week. Let's see. That's depressing. Don't care. Okay, I don't think I'm going to see anything related to combat sports here. Yeah, my feed at the moment is kind of a mess. For any number of reasons. Yeah, I think we're just going to call it there. Alrighty. So that's going to be it for this particular week. All right, let me clean this up, and then we'll do plugs and get out of here. Really short episode this week, but you know what? I am okay with that on occasion. All right, as for plugs, Monday on Damn You Hollywood, where my movie review podcast, that's going to be myself and Mark Radulich. Somebody else with us this week. I think it's just me and Mark. Let me check. Yeah, at the moment it's just the two of us. Okay. We will be reviewing Crime 101. We kind of debated between that and Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, but it's been a minute since we've seen a genuine, good crime movie, and Crime 101 might fit that bill. So we're going to be reviewing that. I go Killer the week after that. That'll be something. Something indeed. None of those are mine. Yeah, that's not mine. So, Damn You Hollywood for Crime 101 tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern on the W2M network. Find that over there. Friday, I will be covering WWE SmackDown per usual. The last two have been okay. They've been bordering on very good, which is nice. Especially after SmackDown had a real bad run, especially leading into the Rumble. Just nothing of interest. It was so bad. So bad. But they seem to be kind of starting to turn a corner over there on the blue brand, so we'll keep an eye on that. And Saturday, UFC Fight Night 267 in the MMA zone of 411mania.com. So go over there. I'll have you updated from start to finish. It's what I do. And next week, we will be back here, and we will review, UFC Fight Night 267, and we will preview UFC Fight Night 268. The UFC is back in Mexico City, headlined by Brandon Moreno and Lonnie Kavanaugh. What else is there? Marlon Vera, David Martinez, Daniel Zellhuber and King Grain, Edgar Chairez, and Felipe Bunes. That's not a bad fight. There's a few good fights on that card, but man, there's some dogs there too. Yeah, there are definitely some dogs on that card. Oof. But full preview next week. And yeah, that's it for me, everybody. So thank you very, very much as always for watching. Again, like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review, whatever is applicable. This is mostly on YouTube now, so it's just like, comment, subscribe. I hate to be the guy doing that particular boilerplate, but I do. So that's what we got. And until next time, that's going to do it for me. I'm about to get buried in snow out here in Utah. Finally. Man, we have just had none, almost none all winter. It's been terrible. And that's genuinely bad for the ecosystem around here to have no snow. We've had almost none. It's been either too warm when it's been raining or too dry when it's been cold enough. So that's been winter here. But we're finally going to get hit. So looking forward to that, sort of. I understand it's necessity. I will try not to drive in the snow because I can do it. I've done it for a while. I just don't like doing it. But I live in a place where that's relevant. So c'est la vie. All right. That's enough about my life. I will see y'all next week. Until then, as always, stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.